1 week. That was all it took for these 3 pillars to completely change the lives of people who before felt exactly as you might feel right now, lost, held hostage by procrastination, and frustrated by starting 1,000 things with an intense fire that always burns out at the first sign of trouble. This feeling of being stuck in a cycle of self-sabotage isn't your destiny. It's merely a symptom that you're fighting the battle with the wrong weapons. What you're about to discover aren't motivational tricks, but the 3 non-negotiable foundations of the warrior's path forged by Miyamoto Musashi. The first is the armor of discipline, which will free you forever from the need to feel like it. The second is the practice of the Master Craftsman, which transforms simple repetition into a path to mastery. And the third is the constancy of the silent warrior, the technique to conquer your inner enemy and forge a new identity. Although the first results can be felt in 7 days, the consistent application of these 3 pillars for 90 days won't just change your habits, it will rewrite the very essence of who you are. The question, therefore, isn't whether the method works, but whether you are ready to abandon the excuses that have kept you in chains. If the answer is yes, your transformation begins now. Have you ever felt that initial fire, that explosion of energy that makes you promise yourself that this time it'll all be different? You wake up early, you plan your day, you feel invincible. That feeling, which you call motivation, is like a spark in the dark. It shines for a moment, but is powerless to sustain a fire in a storm. Relying on it to build anything lasting is the first mistake of the unprepared warrior, because motivation is an emotion, and emotions are as fickle as the wind. The great samurai Miyamoto Musashi did not wait to feel like training to draw his sword. He simply did it. He understood that depending on inspiration is a weakness that the enemy, whether external or internal, will exploit without mercy. Imagine a blacksmith who only works when he feels motivated. His swords would be few and likely flawed. True strength isn't born from a fleeting desire, but from an unshakable decision. Discipline is the steel, while motivation is merely the transient gleam of metal in the fire. This is why your castle of plans crumbles at the first sign of fatigue or boredom. You built your foundations on the shifting sands of a feeling, not on the bedrock of daily practice. The warrior's true journey begins when he understands that action precedes feeling, not the other way around. You must forge a structure that withstands the absence of desire, but it's precisely this structure, your routine. Your routine falls apart because you see it as a prison, not as a dojo. To you, it's a list of tedious tasks imposed by an ambitious version of yourself, and each completed item is just one less brick in the wall of your daily obligation. You don't honor it as a sacred space for practice. You tolerate it as a necessary evil. That's why, at the first sign of weariness, your treacherous mind whispers, "You deserve a break," and you give in, because escaping a prison feels like an act of liberation, not weakness. What's missing from your practice isn't effort, but intention. Miyamoto Musashi didn't see his training as a burden. He saw it as the way. Every strike, every meditation, every solitary step was an affirmation of his identity as a warrior. Your routine breaks because it isn't connected to who you want to become. It's a series of empty actions. Without that deep connection, constancy becomes impossible and discipline a meaningless word, as there is no greater purpose to defend it from the attacks of your weaker self. Think of your routine as a fortress you build in enemy territory. If the walls are erected without a clear purpose, with weak materials and no guards, they won't withstand the first siege. Your laziness, your excuses, your old habits are the army waiting outside, watching for cracks. The structure you've created is vulnerable by nature because it lacks the one essential element that makes it impenetrable. It needs protection. Discipline is, indeed, your armor. And like any samurai's armor, it is not a divine gift, but a creation forged in fire and pressure. Every time you choose to do what needs to be done, instead of what you feel like doing, you are hammering the steel. Waking up to the first alarm, reading 10 pages of a dense book, meditating for 5 minutes in silence. These are not trivial tasks. They are the hammer strikes that shape your protection against inner chaos and weakness. Understand how this armor works. It doesn't stop the arrows of laziness and doubt from being fired at you. It simply makes them ricochet. The undisciplined man tries to argue with his own weakness, a debate he always loses. The warrior wearing the armor of discipline does not debate. He simply observes the lazy thought arise and ignores it, maintaining his focus on his routine. Your constancy on the path is the proof that the armor fits you well, but an armor, no matter how powerful, is useless if it remains on its stand. It must be worn every day, and its steel must be tempered before the sun even rises. The strength for an entire day of battle is determined in the first hour of the morning. It is in this sacred moment that the warrior's rituals are performed, not out of obligation, but to fit every piece of this armor to the body and mind. There is a hidden power in these first acts of the day. The hidden power of a morning ritual lies not in the tasks you perform, but in the declaration of sovereignty you make. By waking before the sun in silence, you claim the first and most important victory of the day, the victory over yourself. While the world is still asleep, immersed in chaos and reaction, you are intentionally sharpening your sword. This act of discipline sends an unmistakable message to your mind. Today I lead, and weakness obeys. Your morning routine is your silent oath of command, but what rituals forge a warrior? Forget complex lists. Start with the essential. First, hydrate your body, the temple of your spirit. Second, sit in silence for 5 minutes, not to fight your thoughts, but to observe them like passing clouds, clinging to none. Third, move with intention, whether with simple stretches or the stances of a kata. Finally, read a single page of ancient wisdom. Dive into Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, or Musashi's own The Book of Five. Rings to align your mind with strategy. The perfect execution of this morning ritual grants you control over the day, but this is only its visible power. The true power, the power that transforms an ordinary man into a legend, is not revealed in a single morning. It is the cumulative result, the compounding interest of daily constancy. The strength of one ritual is immense, but imagine that same strength multiplied by 1,000. That is where the true magic of the practice manifests, as Musashi well knew. Miyamoto Musashi taught that it takes 1,000 days of training to forge a technique and 10,000 days to polish it to perfection. The modern man, addicted to instant results, hears this and recoils in fear. He wants the harvest without the planting. The warrior, however, understands the hidden wisdom. The goal isn't the 1,000th day. The goal is today, repeated with excellence 1,000 times. Your daily routine is not just a step, but the path to mastery itself, where constancy transforms effort into instinct. Think of a musician learning a chord. On the first day, his fingers are clumsy, and the note sounds impure. After 1,000 days of deliberate practice, his fingers no longer need commands. They dance across the strings, and the music flows from his soul, not his mind. The discipline of repeating the same morning ritual, the same reading, the same training, moves knowledge from your head into your blood. This is how a skill becomes a part of you, inseparable from your identity. Musashi's dedication may seem superhuman, the path of a solitary legend far from your reality. Yet the principle he embodies is a universal law of mastery, accessible to all who genuinely seek it. This same power, this same unwavering devotion to the process can be found in a quieter place, far from the battlefields. It lives in the workshop of the craftsman, whose focus turns daily repetition into a routine that is simply unbreakable. Observe the routine of the Master Craftsman. His workshop is his dojo. His tools are his swords. He does not wake up seeking motivation to work. The work is what anchors him to the world. His constancy is born not from a daily struggle against laziness, but from a deep respect for the process. Every piece of wood to be carved, every lump of clay to be molded, is a universe unto itself. His routine is unbreakable because it is not an obligation, but a moving meditation, a sacred ritual. You seek the discipline of Miyamoto Musashi, but perhaps you first need to adopt the soul of a craftsman. The warrior fights an external enemy, but the craftsman engages in a collaborative dance with his raw materials, seeking perfection in the details. He is in no hurry, for he understands that the quality of his work is a direct reflection of his presence and patience. Adopt this mindset in your own routine. Fall in love with the act of doing, and the need to force yourself to do it will vanish. By building this craftsman's routine for yourself, you create a fortress of practice and purpose. Your days gain rhythm and your mind clarity. You become the master of your craft, whatever it may be. However, when the walls of your workshop are secure and the work flows with mastery, a new and more dangerous adversary emerges. It does not attack from the outside. It is born from the silence, from complacency and pride. It is the enemy that lives within you, and it demands constant vigilance. Now that your routine has become a fortress, the enemy has changed tactics. He no longer assaults the gates with the brute force of laziness. He infiltrates as a spy, disguised as pride and complacency. This inner enemy is the most dangerous of all, for he uses your own victories against you. He whispers that you've done enough, that you deserve to relax your discipline, that the rules that brought you here no longer apply to you. Miyamoto Musashi remained a student until his final day, for he knew that the master who declares himself a master has already begun his own decay. This enemy's weapons are subtle justifications. He doesn't say give up, he says just rest today. He doesn't attack your constancy with an axe, but corrodes it with the slow acid of just this once. Your routine, once a path to growth, can become a comfort zone where the ego feeds. Vigilance, therefore, is not a state of tension, but of keen awareness. It is the ability to hear these whispers and recognize them for what they are. The voice of mediocrity trying to pull you back. To fight an adversary who knows all your thoughts and weaknesses, force and aggression are useless. You cannot cast him out, for he is a part of you. The warrior's strategy for dealing with this traitor is radically different. You must draw him out into open ground where there are no shadows for him to hide in. A place of absolute clarity where every lie becomes self-evident. This final battlefield where true constancy is forged is silence. The silence the warrior seeks is not the mere absence of sound, but the stillness of the mind. Amidst the incessant noise of your own thoughts, your doubts, your fears, your ego, you cannot distinguish truth from falsehood. Silence is your inner dojo, the sacred space where you learn to observe these thoughts without becoming their slave. As Miyamoto Musashi would observe his opponent before a duel, you learn to observe your own mind, noting every move of the inner enemy without reacting impulsively. To cultivate this silence in a world that screams for your attention, you need specific rituals. Practice Zazen. Sit for 10 minutes daily with a straight spine, focusing only on your breath with no other goal. Take solitary walks in nature, leaving all electronics behind, allowing your only inputs to be the wind and your own footsteps. Institute an information fast for an hour before you sleep, where you do not read, watch, or listen to anything. You simply exist. When you integrate the practice of silence into your routine with the same discipline as a samurai, the transformation is completed. Constancy ceases to be something you do and becomes part of who you are. The inner enemy does not die, but his voice becomes a distant, irrelevant whisper. You no longer need to fight him. By forging yourself in this silence, you realize you are no longer just trying to follow a path. You have become the path itself, and that changes everything. You now return to the way of the world, but not as the person who began this journey. The routine, the discipline, the constancy, they are no longer tools you wield with effort. They are extensions of your being, fused to your soul. Just as Miyamoto Musashi didn't need to remind himself he was a swordsman, You no longer need to force yourself to be disciplined. Your actions now simply flow from this new identity. The daily struggle against weakness has ceased because you are no longer at war with yourself. The proof of this transformation lies in the absence of effort. Waking up early is no longer a decision. It's a reflex. Maintaining focus isn't a battle. It's your natural state. You no longer do a routine. You live through it. The energy once spent on deliberation and self-criticism is now freed for execution and presence. You have reached the point where the path and the walker become one, and your actions are the natural expression of the order you have cultivated within. Living from this center of silent power, you begin to move through the world differently. Your transformation doesn't need to be announced with words. It is felt in your calm under pressure, in the clarity of your gaze, and in the firmness of your step. You have stopped trying to be someone and have simply become. And in being, you begin to leave a mark on the world. A legacy built not with words or monuments, but with the invisible force of your presence. The legacy of Miyamoto Musashi is not the men he defeated, but the philosophy he left behind, a path of discipline that echoes through the centuries. Your legacy, like his, will not be measured by your visible achievements, but by the invisible strength of your character. It is the stability your presence brings to a chaotic environment. It is the silent inspiration your constancy offers a friend who falters. The silent warrior does not seek to build monuments of stone, but rather to strengthen the spirit of those who cross his path, often without them even realizing the source of that strength. Every day you honor your routine is a stone cast into a still lake. You may only see the initial impact, the small effort of the day, but the ripples spread far beyond what you can see. Your ability to remain calm during a crisis, the integrity with which you conduct your affairs, the patience you show when teaching something, these are the ripples. They touch the shores of other people's lives in subtle ways, creating order and inspiration from your center of discipline. You do not need anyone to validate your journey. The warrior who has reached this stage of mastery seeks neither applause nor recognition. The reward is not in the glory, but in the certainty of having lived with honor, aligned with your deepest principles. Your legacy is not a story to be told, but a presence to be felt. It is the quiet strength of a life lived with purpose, a work of art complete in itself, whose greatest impact lies in its silent example. If you felt the truth in these words and identify with the path of mastery, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel. This is our dojo. Every warrior who joins strengthens this legion, and your click is a vote for the path of discipline. Finally, declare your commitment in the comments. Tell me, what is the first action you will take at sunrise to begin your journey? We have reached the end of this path together. If you have stayed until this point, it is because you have recognized a fundamental truth. Motivation was your cage, and discipline is your freedom. You have been given the keys to the 3 pillars that support a life of purpose: the armor of discipline, the practice of the Master Craftsman, and the constancy of the silent warrior. The map has been delivered. The promised transformation is no longer a secret, but a clear path before you. But knowledge without action is like a sword that never leaves its sheath. Useless. Therefore, I ask you directly, what will you do when the sun rises tomorrow? Will you continue to be a slave to your own inconsistency, or will you strike the first hammer blow in the forge of your new identity? The 90-day journey that can redefine your destiny begins with a single decision, made in this very moment of silence. Are you ready to honor your own potential? Now go, and may your discipline be the blade that cuts through the impossible.